How's it going, everybody? So today, out on the water, I wanted to break down basically how I read water. So I'm going to show you multiple sections that I'm going to fish through the day here, and just basically really concentrate and break down how I'm looking at the water, where I set up and why I set up where I set up. And as well, what sections of the water I'm trying to target. Because obviously we have categories of water type, basically. So you have obvious ones are pools, riffles, and then you have pocket water, and then you have runs. And so the four major water types that we'll focus on. However, you have those transition points where one will segue into another one or transition into the other category or the other water type. But even within that, you have a breakdown of basically lanes. Where fish will hold, where fish will feed, where fish will suspend, or all those things. And then you have hydraulics, how that affects or is affected by structure in the water itself. So yeah, we'll just go through and break it down. I'm on a tailwater this morning, and basically, just to begin with, I'm starting close to the dam. And the main reason why I'm starting close to the dam is because of water temperature. Right now it's about 28 degrees, so it's cold. If I travel further downriver, obviously the water has more time to be influenced by air temperature, and so that's going to affect the behavior of the fish, and even more so the behavior of the aquatic insects, which obviously as those start to become more active, it triggers the feeding behavior of fish. However, up here we should see that still be it shouldn't be as affected, because we're getting water coming out of our reservoir lower in the water column of the lake, so usually the water temperature is a little more consistent. So usually activity will kind of stay consistent up here. So anyway, and I'll try to make a note of that as I progress, or if I decide to move and get somewhere else. So anyway, let's get started. Okay, so right in here we're working a riffle that's transitioning into a pool. So if you look down in here, it's slow, it's deep. That's the pool section, and then going into the tail out, which is back down in here, it shallows up again. So our slowest section of water is going to be right in here on the tail end, and you can see the main current coming in right here in front of us. So our slow water out on that side, as well as you look up, you're watching and looking for the main current, where the current's fastest, and then you have the eddy, if you will, which is also influenced by the big rock up here. So you have the seam, so you have the fast current and the slow current merging right here, and that's going to create the seam. So those are key components to a section of water that you're looking at, where you're going to start, or where you think fish might be. And as we look up here a little bit more to the left, you also have, again, your main current running down the center, but also you have that big rock point up here influencing and creating a big eddy back in here. Again, you have your current seam right down here on this left side, main current, right side, current seam, and eddy on that side. So again, this is another area where trout can hold with very little effort, and having the main current bring food items down into these areas. As the currents merge right here on these transition or these transition zones, you're going to have swirling of the water, and really what ends up happening is any food that's coming directly down in the main current gets kicked out and suspends in here. So that being said, you have a lot of fish again that are holding in here waiting for food to come down, as water temps are on the cooler side. So trout are going to hold in the area where they're going to spend the least amount of calories and wait for food to come to them. So instead of casting right on the transition, what I would do is actually just start in close in the slowest water. That's where majority of your fish are going to be, and as the temperatures start to rise, they may start to shift and transition from over here in the slow stuff and move out closer to the main current. Again, they got to fight that current more and more as they get into these areas. And so to begin with, I'll start in the slower stuff, and then as it warms up, I will work my way through right now, going into the fast current just to see if there are any fish hanging out there, holding in the faster current. Again, this is closer to the dam. The water temperature is going to be more optimal, or closer to a more consistent temperature, and so these fish are going to be a little more used to it, and so it doesn't take them much to get into those feeding zones. And the same with this side. So as we work our way up, I'm going to work from my side of the river and progress my way out, again working through here, and then working on this far side as well. So that's how I break it up. I'm starting at the back end here. I'm not all the way at the tail out, because what I want to do is I want to be able to cast up into this area and allow my drift to come down into the tail out. And so that way I'm not too worried or concerned about spooking fish in this section. Most of these fish are stocked, and so they do tolerate our presence that much more. If I was working more brown trouty, wild fish, I may stand back in here in this area and then cast up into the tail out and then let it drift and then work my way up through. But just to get the most out of my drift to start with, I'm starting about 3/4 of the way down in this pool. I'm going to cast up here and let my drift go down, and then work this water down here, and then progress my way up into that riffle above. So that riffle up here, that would be the end goal. So, and a lot of times standing probably on that side, casting out into the riffle, would give you a little better angle on it. However, standing on that side puts me facing into the sun, and probably won't be as effective seeing the strike, because obviously sun's in your eye and you're just blinded. All right, so that's kind of the breakdown. Let's just see if we can apply these theories to real life here. Got my Euro nymph rod. Probably will transition from straight Euro nymphing or tight lining to suspension rigs or indicators, if you will, depending on the water type we're going to be in. But just real basic. We have seen a lot of midges out here, so I'm starting out on my dropper with a little ICU midge in black and white. I'll show these to you guys later. And egg on the point. The ICU midge is a 16 2/8 mil bead, and then I have a size 14 3/3 mil bead egg on the point here. This is a pink one, ecstasy egg. So anyway, so I'm gonna start in, like I mentioned before, I'm gonna start in where it's calmer, slower, and then progress my way out. Again, I'm on the back end, so I have the slowest current, even in the main current. This is the slowest portion of this run back here, so you can kind of see it right down in here. So let's just start up here real quick. Now, starting with an egg on the point, simply because it's early. We're not seeing the hatch really start until about 10, 11, depending on, should get fairly warm today. So just starting with an egg as an attractor. Obviously I got the midge on the dropper, so if any of the fish are really keyed in on the midges, they'll at least have that option. And then just working my way out. Again, these fish, they're fairly aggressive, and honestly this section here, I'm not sure how well it'll fish, just because this is right off the road parking area. So these fish may be pounded a little bit more, but so on this back end where it's drifting a little slower, I can let it drift a little longer. Now I'm gonna work my way out into the slow stuff out there on the far side. It's just slowly creeping along there. As with most cold water or colder temperature situations, looking for any subtle pause or hesitation in the rig to signify a hit. Oh, a little bump there, but I think that was bottom. Just essentially be hypersensitive to the strikes, set on everything, anything. Get way over in that slow stuff. Nice slow current out there. So when I'm casting on that far side, I got a couple things going on. One, because of the main current, even though you get some swirling and currents that kick out into the slow water over there, it also cycles back into the main current. So as this comes down, it just kind of tends to pull everything towards the main current or towards the faster portion of the water. As well, when I make my cast out there, I do have a little bit of a pull from the line, just the gravity of it. I may have some ice building up on the line. That's also contributing to the flies coming back in. So even though I'm casting quartering upstream, eventually I'll start casting more across the river, hitting the stuff that if I cast it upstream, just because of the current and also the sag in the line, it's pulling back in. I'm not fishing some of this other water a little bit more downstream. So again, if I progress from downstream, I probably would have hit it. But even still, as you move up a step or two, running your drift back through that same water gives it a slightly different aspect in your presentation, and which could trigger a strike. So as you move up, do work your way back through that slower stuff, or the stuff that you're just not covering because of your flies dragging back towards the main current. And that could give you, you know, even another fish out of an area that you run through, or even just get that strike that you weren't able to get otherwise. So again, I'm casting actually pretty much slightly just angled downstream, not much. And just letting it work that back end of the pool there. A little pause. Covering the bottom end before I move up. Only moved up a couple steps. Again, start back in along the bank here. Work this slower water. A little tap there. Even tight to the bank here. I'm about 1.5 feet, 2 feet off. It's got some depth. Progress my way out. A little more to the right. And I'm breaking apart this water into foot wide increments, or foot wide lanes basically. So I can keep my cast into the same lane for at least a couple drifts, and then on the next cast just move it over to the right about a foot. Because in theory, fish really don't move more than 6 to 12 inches either side of them to take any food, and obviously that depends on clarity in the water. The more murky it is, the more you got to hit them right in the face with the fly. The clearer it is, the more they can see laterally in the water, side to side, and so they can move out and grab stuff. And again, also depends on their energy level. If they're lethargic, like they probably are this morning, they're not going to move very far to get a fly. They're basic, just like in murky water, they're going to wait for it to hit them in the face. So making your lanes at least a foot wide will allow you to cover more water and cover more fish. So work out in the main current here, and I'm starting to work my way into the far side. Just trying to search these fish out. Now again, they can be potted as well. You know, fish tend to, they'll find an area they prefer, and with rainbows they may pot up, meaning at least you find one, there might be a few more hanging around with it because it's sitting in an optimal section of water. So just keep that in mind. Brown trout don't tend to congregate like that or pot up. They tend to be a little more solitary. We'll run a couple more drifts through here and then move up again. So one thing is, don't get too caught up in fishing one spot. As long as you have a general idea of what they could be eating. Wintertime, eggs and midges, always a good thing to start out with. Then you can progress through. You know, I may change a fly or two in a spot if I think it's very optimal. Again, I'm trying to locate these fish, and I think what's going on right here is that because the truck is right behind me, it's real easy to get to this spot. This portion of the pool probably gets hit fairly hard versus moving up a little bit where they got bigger rocks that you gotta climb over. The access is a little tougher, and I mean that's 20 feet upriver here, so I may go ahead and do that. Let's swing out. Yeah, let's go ahead and do that. And then, so again, I moved up. I was just standing on the other side of that big rock down here, so I moved up about 20 feet, 30 feet. I'm further up into the slower stuff, into the slower eddy that's on this side of the river, on my side of the river, our side of the river. So again, start in the slow stuff. So I kind of started out a little bit further than I wanted to, just my cast ended about there. Crappy cast. I'm just gonna fish it out anyway. You never know, when your flies are in the water, you're fishing. You know, you're trying to look for a perfect cast. Sometimes that doesn't happen. As long as your flies are in the water, you have an opportunity to find a fish. All right, so we got a back eddy going on, which can also present some presentation issues or affect where you're gonna, or influence where you're gonna cast. Because you got a back eddy, in a sense we're casting downstream now because the current along the bank here is moving upstream, so we may need to bring our cast out a little bit more to the right in order to get a better drift for the flies to move linearly downstream, or you know, with the main current. So let's go ahead and start out just a little bit more to the right. That way our flies aren't swimming against the current, which eggs don't do. And most midges don't either. They'll just ascend with the they'll ascend through the water column due to their gaseous bubble that they secrete around themselves to hatch when they're in that pupal phase. All right, so working our way out. Settling on bottom there. Let's get out a little further. Keep working our way on out. All right, so I'm right on that transition, the inside seam. We don't have that far seam because that riffle, you can see it extends pretty much all the way across. What gives it that seam is that big boulder straight across from me. That initiates that break in the current. Oh, bottom. I thought that was one. It's just a gradual pull down. Right through the water we'd already drifted through. There is a fish. Now see how that happened on the very end? I'd already casted and fished through that stuff, but allowing your drift to go through the water you'd already fished gave us this opportunity to get a hit. And that basically was on the swing, though that it's on the midge. As that midge started to ascend in the water column, that's when that fish hit it. And he hit it pretty good. So he's definitely on the feed. Little rainbow. I'm not gonna take them out of the water because it's cold and don't want to expose their gills for too long of a time in the air. That'll create issues. Come on, buddy. Trying to keep you in the water. We got some wounds going on. All right. So again, it was in that back end of the drift that we had already worked through. All right, let's try it again. There's another one. So that one's on the egg. So that was right on that seam. And one thing I'll show you all is there is a transition from the shelf, basically, where that riffle drops into the slow pool, or the slower portion of the pool down here. All right. He's all twisted up. Give us a second here, gotta get him unraveled. There you go. All right, on the egg, big fish. All right, so as we look at this riffle here, we have the riffle and pool. So we got the eddy or the pool side of the river here, and again, they don't always segment themselves, you know, riffle, pool, run, whatever, pocket water. So sometimes that division happens in the middle part of the river, so, or linearly down the middle of the river. So you have this riffle right on that edge, or right as it comes closer to this rock right in here. Try to get you back in focus. There's a shelf, so meaning it shallows up and then it gets deeper in here, and part of that is created because of that big rock. It creates some swirling and scouring, and so you get that drop. As well as this water gets higher, there's a pinch point, and that also can create that riffle happening here as well. So it transitions from slow to deep. Now when that happens, because that water has to follow the contour of the river bottom, it does tend to slow down because the water has to change direction, and so that can create a slower portion of the water column. So basically it's what they call laminar flow. So the surface of the river tends to be the fastest, and as you progress your way down into the water column, the water is meeting resistance with the bottom of the river, and so it has to slow down. That friction is going to slow down as well. You know, you have rocks and shelves and drop-offs. The water has to change its contour to conform and move around those objects, so that slows it down in turn also. So again, when you're looking at a section of river, you're not looking just at the surface. You got to take in and observe what's happening on the river bottom as well to see what your current situation is going to be like in that current situation. If that makes sense. All right, anyway, a little breakdown of this riffle dropping off of this shelf into this pool. So that's it. So we moved up not too much further, but right here in front of the camera there is a really deep bucket basically coming off from right here, right in here. So it's really deep right there. So that'll be, you know, where I'm going to set up just a little bit on the downstream side of the camera here. Majority of that drift will be working its way through that deeper water right there. So just a little breakdown of where we moved. We were right down here a little earlier. Picked up one fish right out from that rock, and then one more fish down here. So all right, now we moved up. We got some deeper, slower water we can cover. All right, so cast up. I'm gonna work that real slow stuff. definitely let those flies get down. Looks like we got some conflicting current, back eddy, and main current wanted to push downstream. So the main camera died, but I'll continue with the GoPro here. So we're working out into that. Basically, it's transitioning from the eddy. If you notice here, the current wants to go back upstream. So you can always facilitate by just moving your rod angle back upriver with the back eddy. Let's see if that'll help. I do want to get out further into that transition where it drops from the riffle into this pool. Came in right towards us. So what I'm noticing here is the current isn't very consistent. Meaning it's not just traveling in one direction consistently. It's swirling, it's kicking in, it's pushing out, it speeds up, it slows down, and that's really all this influence of the back eddy. Oh, I had a hit right there. Merging with the main current out there. What that does is it forces these fish to always change position, which is kind of a lot of work. Where I got that last hit was out here in the main current as the water was coming off of the riffle shelf into the slow section right here. And unfortunately it was downstream of me and I didn't really get a good hook set on it. That was definitely a hit. Let's see, work that shelf again. Well, there's got to be another one down there. Straight across. Bring it back up, let's cover this other upper angle here. Oh, I don't know. Looked good, but I don't know if that was really a fish or not. Now the other thing too is, well, I had two eat the egg, so that's actually a good idea of what they're gravitating towards. However, I know midges will definitely be hatching later, not much later, and wondering if just doubling up on the midge would give me a little more action, a little more productivity. Move out here a little bit more. Pause. Yeah, I may do that. Just double up on the 16 midges. There's one. That one ate the egg. Yeah, let's just switch it up. I mean, that's kind of a lot of drifts, and I know there's probably quite a few fish down there. That's a good looking bow. Hold over. calm down. Just wait till they're a little mellow, because I don't use a catch and release tool or any of that stuff. I just grip the fly with my thumb pad and thumbnail and then just pop it out. Wait till they're calm though, don't try to do it. Like that one lucked out, he was pretty active still. Because when they're real active, they I've almost had my thumbnail get ripped off a couple times. When I was the impatient one. Get out there in the riffle again. Let it fall off that shelf. All right, now let's switch to that midge. I just want to see. So the reason why I'm switching, obviously we got the one to eat the midge as it was ascending, so on the as it was swinging out. So that was a good sign. However, why am I switching if I'm getting eats on the egg? Obviously I think they're on the bottom, so they haven't transitioned up, but I know we're going to see quite a few midges hatching later on. So here's a little ICU midge that I'm running, a size 16. I got two of them. I got one on the point as well, or the dropper, sorry. So let's run this. And just see if that changes. You know, because they could be keying in on actual midges, but you know, with the droppers suspended off the bottom, they're not moving up to take it, so the egg is in front of them. It's an opportunistic eat. Let's just see if running the midge would be a little different here. Let it swing up. Kind of moving along a little fast. Bring it in again, work this water we'd already covered. We'll give it at least 3-4 more drifts. If not, if you don't get anything, then it may be the egg is what they're just seeing and keying in on to start with, until the midges really start moving around. Come on, fish. So as each drift comes through the current, you're just watching and really being observant, assessing what the current is doing with your, really what it's doing with the cider. Watch the cider in reaction to the water, as well as obviously watching it for strikes. So it's slowed down there. It's not moving near as fast. It was moving drifting a little faster earlier. Now it's speeding up, pushing out slightly. Well, it is fighting a little bit of a current push in towards the bank. Bottom down. All right, and then getting one cast out further in the riffle. Now out there, I'm watching the cider, trying to see if it'll slow down again. Then I know it's following the contour of the river bottom and hitting some slower current. But again, I'm with slightly lighter flies. Let's go back to that egg. We'll just do a comparison drift here. Egg back on the point. Nothing hit the midge on the point. All right, back out there again. A little further out, hitting that transition. And the other thing is we may have just hit the one or two fish that we're willing to feed here. Either we missed them or we caught them. But I know there's got to be a few more. Get back up here again. Well, let's give it a couple more drifts, and I think we just covered all the fish that were willing to play. Bottom. Last one. All right, well, let's go find some other water.